Hello, and welcome to this mini masterclass on how to run a great social media channel. I'm delighted to be joined by John Peterson, who is responsible for the social media of the Library of the Orkney Islands, located just off the north coast of Scotland. Orkney Library has over 82,000 followers on X, which is quite something considering the entire population of the Orkney Islands is only 22,000. The account has a following from all over the world and has attracted attention from the likes of Richard Osmond and Stephen Fry. In 2023, when a book was returned to the library 49 years after it was due, Orkney's post on X got 16,000 likes and the story was covered in national news. A community service to a small island population reaching social media stardom is quite a feat. So, who better to talk about how to run a great social media channel than the man behind it all, John Peterson? Welcome, John.
Hi, everyone.
Please, could you start by telling us your top three tips for running a great social media channel?
Okay, so my top three tips for social media are to try and create your own content as much as you possibly can, to always use visuals in everything you post, and to follow the size doesn't matter.
Brilliant. Thanks, John. So, your first tip was create your own content. Could you tell us a bit more about this?
I think it's really important when you're using social media to try and, as far as possible, create your own stuff. So you're not just relying on sharing other people's stuff, reacting to other people's stuff. I think it's really important that you create your own ideas, tell your own stories, show your own business or account or what you're doing. And I think that's what connects with people. I think if you primarily are just sharing other people's stuff, then what do the followers need you for? They can just follow those accounts. So I think it's really important, and I also think the more you create your own content, the more you develop a voice and a style, and you start to learn what the people following you react to. So I think that's a really important thing for establishing yourself on social media.
So, you talked a bit about how the more you post, the more you kind of find your own voice. Could you talk a bit more about this and how you've done that in for the Orkney Library?
Yeah, so I think that the more you post and when you get feedback from people and you get to know what's worked well for you and what's maybe not worked well, it helps you to kind of shape the stuff you do moving forward. And part of that is about developing the tone in your posts and the sort of tone of the account. We use quite a lot of humor for different things, but obviously that's not always appropriate. And I think that would be the case with any organization. There's always a point where you can involve humor or a light touch to things because that's quite appealing for followers. That not everything is going to be either information or like if you're dealing with more serious issues sometimes, if everything is that. I think everybody, I mean, humor is just part of everybody's life. So I think if you can try and interject that into your posts, and it doesn't have to be telling jokes, it doesn't have to be completely hilarious. There's no pressure on that, but even just a kind of light touch to your posts, a kind of airy voice, just a bit of fun along the way, go really helps when you're trying to develop your account. And usually the stuff that we do that does the best has a kind of humor tone to it somewhere. Some of it's because we're a library and archive, we have a lot of interesting stuff and old photos and things like that that are really interesting to people. But even that, we'll try and take a bit of have a bit of fun with. And
Great, thank you. Your second tip, you said use visuals. Could you explain this a bit more, please?
yeah, I think some social media channels, so Instagram, you have to use a visual, but with X and Facebook and Blue Sky, etc., you can get away with just posting text. But I try wherever possible to use visuals, photos, videos, even GIFs or something like that. But I think when you think of your posts going into everybody's feed, then if it's just text, it tends to get lost. So I always try and use a visual. I think that's what quite often stops people, and then and then they'll read what you've actually posted. But also, I think sometimes people think that unless they've got really highly produced visuals, then they can't use it. But that's not the case. I think snap a photo. I mean, if you can do some basic cropping and stuff, probably better. But anything's better than nothing. And I just think always try and use visuals with everything you post. And that's, the best of all is if the visual really actually adds to the post, explains the post. But even if it's just an information post or something like that, always try and use something visual because I think that's what stops people.
Great advice. Thank you, John. And your final tip was size doesn't matter. What did you mean by this?
I think um, I think what I mean is that you don't have to think you've got a small organization or a small business or you're from what might be considered a remote or a small community. I think social media is a really good leveler. And I think whoever you are and whatever you do, social media gives you access to the whole world. You've got the same words and opportunities to tell stories, get people interested in what you're doing. And I think sometimes people feel like what they're doing is a bit niche or where they live is sort of maybe wouldn't be interesting to people. But my experience is that's not the case at all. And in fact, people are interested in all sorts of stuff. And so I think it's really important when you're creating content, when you're posting, that you don't come at it from the attitude that people won't be interested in this because people are almost always interested in everything and you'll find people that are interested and then that's the people who start following you. So I think just always post with confidence, I suppose, as well, and never think that what you're doing won't be interesting because if you get it to the right people, it will be.
That's great and nice, inspiring note to finish up on. Thank you, John. Um, so as you know, we are asking everyone who does a mini masterclass to share some reading or watching or listening recommendations. Please, could you share yours?
Well, I've just finished reading Robert Harris's latest novel, which is just in the lead up to World War One, and it's about the Prime Minister Asquith. It's based on true letters and notes and stuff, and it's just a really interesting read. Robert Harris is always worth reading. Every single book's sort of a different subject and a different place he's writing about, but always really worth reading. So I've just finished that, and I'm just about to start reading the fifth Anthony Horowitz, Daniel Hawthorne, which is his crime mystery series. Really good series if you've never read it. And it's really interesting because in it, Anthony Horowitz appears as himself, as the kind of Dr. Watson character to Daniel Hawthorne, who's the kind of Sherlock modern day. So that's what I'm going to read next. It's the fifth book, and all four previous ones have been great. So that's my next read. And I've been listening to the Richard Osman Marina Hyde podcast. The rest is entertainment. I think it's a really good listen. Really funny, interesting. Lots of stuff you didn't know that goes on in the entertainment industry. Often they're talking about stuff I've never even watched, but they still make it really interesting. And it's kind of my favorite read of the moment, listen of the moment.
Thank you, John. Who better to come to for some reading recommendations than someone who works in a library? Thank you so much for sharing your recommendations and your top tips. It's been a real pleasure having you on the mini masterclass series and hearing about the magic behind the brilliant Orkney Library social media channels that are so loved across the world. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ewan.